What is the most main character moment you've ever witnessed in real life that went horribly wrong? So, girl is very talented at singing. However annoying she was about it, nobody could take that away from her. She has a beautiful voice. After she graduated and her youngest brother was a freshman at our high school, she came into the chorus room before class started and had him start playing a song on the piano while she sang. Most people were ignoring it, still talking with their friends, and I was grimacing in my seat because she was clearly trying to have an "and everybody clapped" moment, and it was not successful. Halfway through the song, though, the chorus teacher came in, looked at her with no love or admiration, and just said, "Get out." One of the most awkward things I have ever witnessed. Next story. I used to work with an older woman who was a bit of a pain. She refused to learn new things, wanted nothing to do with computers as they started coming in, etc., and was basically petty and stuck in her ways. Whenever something didn't go the way she wanted it to, she would quit her job, and then our director would come down and talk her into staying. One week, while the director was on vacation, she didn't like something the manager asked her to do, so again, she quit. Well, I took that opportunity to immediately organize a retirement party for her. As the director was on vacation, there was no one to talk to her into staying. And with the party getting organized within hours and everyone congratulating her, she realized she would actually have to retire to avoid embarrassing herself. I didn't miss her. Next story. At the end of one of my son's soccer games, they lined up to high-five each other and said, "Good game, good game." Pretty standard formality. One guy on his team, though, who was known to have anger issues, refused to high-five a guy who'd fouled him during the game and said, "Catch cancer" instead of "good game." Turns out the kid on the other team, who'd already been yellow-carded and apologized mid-game, mind you, was an actual cancer survivor. I've never seen a brawl out quicker and never during the good game ritual. Mouthy kid kicked off the team for the season, no refund, and he was not missed. Next story. The woman I dated in college was very religious before we started dating, but was, I don't remember the word, disfellowshipped, I guess? Whatever it's called when a Jehovah's Witness gets kicked out of the church. Now, we were together for 7 years. When she broke up with me, she told me she was visited in a dream by the spirit of her deceased father who claimed that the end was nigh and compelled her to rejoin the faith before it was too late, and that in order to do so, she needed to free herself from homosexuality. Kinda hard to argue with that logic, so I didn't. A week later, a mutual friend told me she had confided to her that she was heartbroken and didn't actually mean for us to break up. She just wanted to see whether I'd fight for her. Fight who exactly? God and her dead father? Next story. YouTube prank person with a huge following booked the 3,000 cap venue that I worked at for his live show. Out of his own pocket, no promoter would touch it. Immediate red flag. So they spent the whole day in technical rehearsals with no clear plan of what the show was even about, but making the venue staff change all kinds of things to accommodate them. So come showtime, venue maybe has 50 to 100 people in it, mostly parents who had brought their kids along, presumably at their kids' insistence. The prank guy gets cold feet and freezes at the side of the stage and sends his mates on to fill the time. They just do wrestling moves on each other and some weird pre-recorded bit where they try to convince their friend he had cancer and was dying. Not even sure they understood what a prank was at that point. They certainly didn't understand good acting. As soon as people started loudly walking out, the main guy comes onto stage to give a speech and just goes off on a 10-minute rant about how impressive his YouTube channel is doing. And if you don't know what that means, then you don't know anything. Then he walks off the stage, leaving his mates standing there discussing if they should keep doing wrestling moves. Incredible performance. Next story. I watched a drunk guy show up to a house party, then immediately throw a potted plant on the floor of the entryway while yelling, "You can't F with me, I'm a man, I'll do what I want." Well, he was in the house for maybe 20 seconds before he was tackled out the front door and beaten to a pulp in the front yard. Next story. The worst one that I have ever witnessed was a colleague. The company was downsizing due to the economy, and he, along with many others, were let go as a result. It was also his first job out of college, and he had only worked here for a few months. On his last day of work, he sent an email to the entire company, which was several thousand people at the time. In this email, he named every single person he disliked, detailing everything that he thought was wrong with the company, and ended it by urging the good ones to rise up and quit in solidarity. I think he saw this as his Spartacus moment, but in reality, he was really just a 22-year-old pseudo-intellectual with anger management issues, and this email went down in infamy. Edit. I forgot to mention that there were several people in management roles who were actively trying to help him find another job before he wrote this email. They wrote him recommendation letters and were connecting him with people they knew at other companies. He was truly let go due to the economy and no other reason. All of that was rescinded, though, as soon as he sent that email. Next story. It went horribly wrong for my boss at the time. So, after multiple employees had gone to him on their own with issues that had risen in the workplace, boss, already known to be full of himself, pulls everyone in for an unpaid team meeting, just to launch into a 15-minute speech about how he struggled in his youth, his parents were loaded, how his teachers worked extra hard to set him on the right path, and how he didn't understand things like integrity, honesty, etc. until he started working at the current business, which he had inherited from his parents. Then he ends with a grin and is like, "Does anyone have any questions?" And then, a girl who had been at the company the longest raises her hand and says, "I thought we were here to talk about the issues I brought to you last week." Instantly crushed. It was beautiful to watch. Next story. Oh, I've got one here. A buddy and I drove up to DC for a parkour jam, around 2010 when it was cool. After an organizer-led warm-up, we all split up to do some flippies around the spot. Not 5 minutes into our first day, and a guy had climbed up on a 7-foot wall for a backflip. Everyone stops to watch, and dude under rotates and cracks his jaw. Ambulance has to come and get him. The mood at the jam significantly shifted that first day. Next story. It's not that big of a deal, but I was at a concert and a girl had turned around to take a selfie with a big cup of some drink held up next to her face. She leaned back onto the people in the row in front of her to get the angle she wanted, and that person shoved her off of them, and she spilled her drink all over herself and dropped her phone. I don't think she got the picture she wanted, but we all had to listen to her crying about her clothes and her phone. Next story. We were hanging out at my friend's house by his pool, and the music was louder than his dad liked. So he came out, and my friend was disrespectful to his dad, talking tough and ignoring him, and me and a couple of my friends were like, "This ain't gonna go the way he thinks." And then sure enough, dad comes over, yanks the phone out of his hand and throws it into the darkness and told him if he goes after it to not come back, and says, "Time to go, gentlemen." So we said good night, thanks for having us, hid our phones so they didn't get launched, and then we left. There comes a time in all children's lives where they try to act a little too tough and a little too cool in front of their friends and then immediately get humbled, thinking the force field of company will do anything, but alas, they forget to realize you're still a freaking kid, dude. I've been there, I'm sure many others have. I don't think I've ever, gone to this level and had my phone thrown into the woods in the darkness, but, everybody learns one way or another. Anyway, next story. So, at a Starbucks in Taiwan, a white English-speaking man was sitting next to me while I was studying. Suddenly, he stood up and loudly demanded in English that people in a corner of the shop stop playing music in public. They were as confused as the rest of us, though, because the music was coming from the speaker in the ceiling and wasn't that loud anyways. They told him this, and he insisted they were playing it. Then he stormed back to the spot next to me where I was open-mouthed gaping at him. Then he loudly said, "What are you looking at?" And I told him he's the reason people don't like Americans, and then left to avoid being associated with him. Edit. I guess I need to clarify that I too am a white American, and that in that brief chat we had, he had sat down and he told me that he just arrived from Chicago. Next story. Colleague employed by private employer for 10 plus years, assigned to cover multiple departments as needed. One day, decided they didn't want to work the half-day session they were assigned to a specific department. This was not an out-of-the-ordinary schedule. They worked in this department weekly. It was not a last-minute change. The schedule had been released for weeks. But through a literal hissy fit, refusing to work that department for the afternoon, went sobbing to the business owner when manager said to do it or take the day off unpaid. Well, they got away with it until a few weeks later when they were walked out. Next story. There was a girl I went to high school with. Didn't know her personally, but she was fairly well known, mostly because of how full of herself she was. Thought herself the best actress in the school's theater, best singer amongst the girls' choir, yada yada yada. And one time declared she wouldn't be getting her driver's license because she didn't need it because she didn't need a car when she was in New York or on Broadway. Well, skip ahead to our school's talent show. Naturally, she gets up on stage to sing, I think it was something from Hairspray, and in the middle of it, randomly, she just starts humming the tune of the song. She forgot the words. So she gets up there humming her heart out, occasionally singing a single line that she remembered. She did not end up in New York. Next story. Had a former coworker who quit after I had just started working there because she didn't get promoted to department manager. The funny thing is, she never even applied for the position. She assumed it would just be handed to her. She had been working there off and on for over a decade, but she had left and came back several times, and I think she thought management would beg her to stay once again. Well, she thought wrong because she was essentially told to not let the door hit her in the ass on the way out. Next story. I witnessed one recently that went horribly right, if you don't mind me sharing. Saw a band play at a small but cozy venue during a reunion with some friends. A new addition to the gang, K, was a young hippie kind of guy. He was the very stereotypical surfer hippie kind of vibe, and very forward, very upbeat. The band, they were playing good, tight and groovy, and after they went off stage, this guy waited 0 seconds flying up on the stage asking if he could do a song. I was bracing for impact because this could be the cringiest stuff ever, and it totally wasn't. He was effing great. Half the band that was just playing rushed on stage to help him out, and new band formed. Better than the last band. Incredible. Next story. My sister. Now an awesome person, but was awful as a child. But as a kid, she would sabotage kids in class and tattle on everyone. She would work weeks to gain trust just to stab someone in the back. Her mom, my stepmom, hated me. Like, genuinely wished I was dead hated me. She taught my sister to do the same to me at home, and so when she started school, she did the same to other kids at school. She was very badly and violently bullied for years. I even took a pity a few times and told her why she wasn't liked and why she had no friends. Her words back then were something like, "Their feelings don't matter to me. All that mattered to her was her." Then also, my sister would get rewards for stupid things. If she didn't get sent to the principal office for 1 week, we would get ice cream. If she did a small chore, her chores were like small and stupid things like pick up 5 pieces of trash, she would get rewards like toys and candy. I once got angry and screamed about it because I never got rewards or treats. No ice cream, not toys, not candy. I maybe could get ice cream if I was in the car while it was being grabbed and if I was also perfect that week. But any minor issue and I got nothing. But I never could have anything my sister couldn't have, but she could have things I was denied. So again, more unfairness. Well, when I was once throwing a fit over it, my sister looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's because you don't matter." And honestly, I could talk ages about issues, but I'll leave it at those 2 stories. But my sister's entire childhood, she genuinely thought and was raised to believe nobody mattered but her. She was the favorite. She was perfect, prettier, and better at all things than anyone else, especially me and her classmates. She thankfully, though, grew out of her mother's abusive influence as a teen, but oof, was that a time. I adore her nowadays. We call near daily now despite living thousands of miles apart. She's not perfect, but she's become a better person genuinely. Alright y'all, where was the father during this story? Back on Really Sparked, may I hope we return to that channel someday. There'd be a lot of times where people talk about interpersonal relationships or stuff with parents, and I'm thinking, okay, where's the boyfriend? Where's the dad? Where's the sister? Where is Papa in this story? He wasn't mentioned. Was he taking a nap? Was he the cliche working overseas 24/7 kind of dad? Is he dead? I don't want to be rude. I just want to know, where was the dad here letting all of this happen? But anyway, next story. So, when anime cons were ramping up in the late 2000s, we had a guy on a convention runner's mailing list declare he was running his own event. We would see this from time to time, usually by main character syndrome teenagers or young adults. You begin to know those serious about it, like planning stuff, marketing, venue, contracts, and those wishing out loud. Guests, profit, power. We had one really sad dude, though, try to start one at his university. He made a website, marketed the F out of it, but apparently didn't have an ounce of reality in his skull. Claimed guests that he didn't have, stole proprietary graphics from other websites, like mascots and logos, claimed tournaments and copyrighted companies like MTG, Pokemon, etc. It was all his ego, and not "we're doing XYZ, but I'm doing XYZ, he would say. Then, about 2 months before the date, some of us tried to reason with him. Around the same time, agents of these guests, corporate lawyers and such started posting publicly that he was not affiliated with them, that he never contacted them, and so on and so forth. They contacted his university, who also posted, saying, "This is not a sanctioned function." But this guy doubled down, said all of us actual planners were all conspiring against him, etc. Eventually, his abuse got him banned from the mailing list. We're not sure how much money he received for tickets because we were sure he was lying about his registration numbers, but it couldn't have been more than $2,000 and was probably a lot less. A few people who claimed that they knew him said he was in denial and he wasn't promoting, he was slamming and complaining about everyone else just being against him. The event was pure fantasy, conjecture, and had no bearing on anything real. We don't think he was consciously engaging in fraud, just overall delusion. Next story. A few years ago, I was at the airport waiting to pick up my checked bag. A mariachi band walks in playing, and a man with a bouquet of flowers slowly walks in, stops in front of a woman, gets down on one knee and pulls out a ring. Everyone starts cheering and forms a big circle around the band and the couple. The man is on his knee for a long time, and I think the girl started crying, but not happy tears, and eventually the crowd all started looking at each other like, oh, we should give them some space. I got my bag and I left, and I felt so bad for both the guy and the girl. Next story. My first year as a property manager. I was with a company that did vacation rentals, ski rentals, and regular stuff. We had this one ski rental client that was just tier 1 entitled rich a-hole from day one, but when he left, there were some damages and stuff, so we handled the security deposit like normal and he got back a small amount. Well, then he files in small claims against us, which was dumb to start with, but here's the fun part. He kept sending requests for delays to the court because it wasn't convenient for him to be there when scheduled. After the third time, the judge had had enough and wouldn't allow another reschedule. But still, he sends an email 5 minutes before court requesting and denied. But wait, that's not the truly great part. He submitted a statement of facts as a part of the filing, and when the judge asked if we wanted to move forward with the plaintiff in absentia, we requested she read the renter's statement of facts and then let us know if she had any questions. So she starts reading, and as she turns the page, I nudge the company CEO and I say, "Watch her face." I knew what was coming, and it did not disappoint. And I've never seen a judge so quickly get a "what the F did you just say?" look on her face as she read the part where the renter complained that we had hired a bunch of probably illegal Mexican cleaners who probably did the supposed damages. End quote. Guys, the judge was Hispanic. It was so hard not to just start laughing. She put the paper down, told the renter's lawyer that we're done, immediately found for us, and that was it. Years later, he tried to rent from us again, but he was blacklisted. Funny he called us again. I imagine me letting every other company in the area know about that case, for training purposes of course, may have had something to do with it. Next story. I was a department head in my last full-time job at a consulting firm. When I found out my wife was pregnant with our first child, I decided to quit, but gave them 6 months to do the transition, basically deciding who would replace me and then train them up. Well, a woman in my department was secretly sleeping with her team lead and was pissed I didn't choose him. So she lobbied one of the owners behind my and the other owner's back to choose her secret boyfriend, mainly lying about my favoritism, etc. But the main reasons I didn't choose him was because he was lazy and incompetent. I knew he would be favoring his secret girlfriend that everyone knew about, and that it would be her who would end up being the de facto department head anyway. Fast forward 6 months later, after I left, they were both fired because the department refused to continue to work under him and her. Edit. Also forgot to mention that the guy I was training to replace me also quit when he got passed over. So they ended up losing 2 of their most experienced employees for that department, and it was in turmoil for quite a while. I refused all of their offers to return, even temporarily, and the other guy cut them off completely. Next story. Popular, super likable guy in college. Everyone was his friend. Captain of sports team, president of fraternity, all-around great guy with a most likely to succeed vibe. Follow up on him several years later to find out he was in jail on child SA charges. Still hard to reconcile the person I knew with the crime, but goes to show you never really know. Next story. I played Can't Touch This by MC Hammer in the middle of an electro psytrance mix at a rave to make a point to the wanker of a big shot DJ who tried to take my sunrise set. And everyone went nuts. The sound system fell over. It was ratchet strapped down. One girl ended up in the hospital and it broke one of our treble horns. Turns out though, I was the better DJ. He booked me for a load of festivals and clubs after that. Next story. In my section in grad school, there were these white people with German/Dutch last names that always seemed nice but would never make friends with anyone non-white and would always sit by themselves. They were good looking and everyone wanted to talk to them, but no one could ever get past just the general introductions. At the beginning, no one noticed, but eventually it became kind of obvious. Everyone sort of avoided them because they kept talking crap about everyone. Sometimes their whispers are loud enough for people in the other side of the class to hear. Eventually, they kind of become ostracized by the whole class. There would be kickbacks, parties, bar crawls, but no one would invite them. Everyone became pretty close by the end of the year, but not with them. Then, one day at lunchtime, I was walking to class and I see them sitting together in their usual corner just staring at everyone walking by and probably whispering crap about them, and I saw one of them notice that no one walking by was saying hi to them. We were a small grad class, so by the end of the year, we all knew each other pretty well and became more or less friends, but not with them. I saw the horrid look on her face, the realization that they're actually the losers in the class. And after that point, they stopped sitting next to each other, started to talk to other people, and make best friends with other non-white people. But it was too late. Everybody saw through them, and there were 2 more years of schooling. They managed to make 0 new friends because everyone would warn the new class about them. It's a small career community, and it doesn't look like they've had many job opportunities since graduating. Their reputation precedes them everywhere they go now. Racism has been defeated, everyone. Cody Rhodes, you can rest. It's over. We won. And not just regular racism, but snooty upper-class European-type racism. That's the type I really dislike. We don't talk about that one enough. But anyway, it's over. We have no more problems in the United States. Next story. So, a fellow that worked in a neighboring department a couple of years ago now decided to come to work at 3 a.m. or so and just sit in the parking lot. He used that time to wait until a now coworker was coming into work between 5 and 5:30 a.m. to confront him about parking in his spot. We have no designated parking. It's first come, first served parking. From what I remember, this fella got suspended with pay by HR, had a list of things to work on to be able to come back to work, but allegedly, he decided to make his own list of demands before he would come back. This got all the way up to the CEO, and he basically just fired him at that point. Afterwards, he had several Facebook posts about the workplace, and anytime someone posted something about an opening or a job well done, he would comment his own feelings/perceptions, which were always negative. And this was not the first run-in with HR with this fella either. Apparently thinks highly of himself and that his opinion trumps others' opinions. Basically has to be the smartest person in the room. Next story. Rec league soccer team I was on got hijacked by an egotistical do-it-all coach/player. People were dropping off through the season, but some stayed on because we did fairly well and we were in the championship tournament. We were literally down to 11 players though. Then, one play in the semifinal, I have a clear shot at a goal, so I call for it and go take it just to collide with Mr. Amazing, who flung himself to try and make the kick. He exploded on me verbally, abusing me, and we nearly got into a fight. I told him to F off and walk off the field, leaving my jersey behind to show that I quit. He laughed and said good riddance. We won that game, but one player severely injured their ankle. 9 players left, and another could not make it to the championship game since they'd be out of town for work, and this was effing rec league. So 8 players left. Well, you have to field at least 9 players or forfeit. Teammates were begging me to come back for the championship, and I said I would, on one condition, that I was apologized to, in front of the whole team. The dude just needed to be humble for like 10 effing seconds. Anyways, congratulations to the other team on their automatic championship victory. Next story. I'm driving, I'm about to make a left turn with a green arrow. Then, a teenager in a beater full of hubris speeds towards the same turn, but from the opposite direction. He nails the gas to make the right. He clearly had a red and was trying to beat me to it, but had misjudged how close I was. So I slam the brakes to avoid hitting him. He smirks and waves as he leaves me there to curse him. Then, within about 2 seconds, a cop behind me throws on his lights and then pulls him over. I wave as I drive past. Next story. One lad I went to school with used to brag all the time about how his parents let him do anything. We were hanging out after school one day smoking weed, and he was going on about how his parents let him smoke weed in the house. Then, a car pulls up, and his mom gets out. This kid goes white and hurls the joint he's smoking. His mom smacks him around the back of the head and drags him to the car by his ear. And he got pretty sick of everyone asking him if they could go over to his house to smoke after that. Next story. I was a bartender in a small but wild town, and there was a local tweaker chick who sang for a half-assed local bar band who thought she was God's gift to the vocal arts. One time, though, an actually decent band came in from out of town and had a packed house on the weekend when that effing freak show went up on stage and just started, imposing herself on the whole band and the whole crowd and the song, which she barely knew. After the song, the band took a break and the manager came to me and said, "Get that crazy B-word out of here, she's ruining the whole show." They didn't even know her. She didn't know them. She didn't even know the song, but she was so exalted by blessing them with her overdone effing theatrical wailing that passes for singing in her mind. But yeah, methamphetamine, it'll make a lot of main characters. Next story. Sad to say that this was a relative of mine. He was out of work and a connection got him an opportunity to work in the country's government, not the USA, and he went in to interview with the department leader and basically demanded the current workforce in that unit be fired so he could reconstruct it in his own way. Needless to say, he did not get the job, and he may have also been high at the time. Next story. I was opening one day at a different job I had last year, and one of my coworkers, who is a very old and cranky Vietnam vet, was asked by the manager to set up some displays real quick. Probably would have taken like 5 minutes tops. But he was being stubborn about doing something on the computer. They were arguing when I walked in, and the manager walked away and asked me if I could do the task, which I obliged and completed in 5 minutes. The manager then comes back and thanks me for doing what he asked, which set off my coworker. So him and my manager start arguing again. In the middle of the argument, my coworker yells, "You want me to quit? I will quit right now." And my manager responded, "That is your choice to make." So my coworker took off his vest and his name tag, threw it at my manager, then walked off the counter and out the front door, leaving me and one other person on the counter alone for 4 hours with a huge line until the rest of the staff came in that day. Then the old curmudgeon waddled back in later that day because he forgot his hat and mug, and he looked so dejected. Next story. Nightclub bouncer in our small town thought he was something a bit special, was generally a rude knobhead to everybody, and known to be happy to use his fists. So we were walking down the high street after a night out in dribs and drabs, and our friend's older brother was walking ahead of us. Having come out for a few beers with us, the bouncer decided he'd try and show off to these girls, whilst they were all waiting at the kebab van, and started on the eldest brother. At the same time, our friend's younger brother happened to be riding his bike home and saw his elder brother get started on. So he jumped off of his bike, picked the bouncer up, and had him folded up in seconds. Youngest brother was a judo champion, and even at 15 was an absolute unit. The bouncer was not far off from tears and begging for mercy as we all just stood around laughing at how a 15-year-old was ripping him to pieces. After a casual beating up and a huge telling off from the 15-year-old with threats that he'd come up and smash him outside his club if he ever pulled any crap like that again, he let the bouncer go. He just got up and ran, and I don't really recall ever seeing him again. Next story. I work in a prison for context, and this comes from the mouth of one of my partners. He was waiting at the gate to bring a van inside when another officer walked by it. This officer is a bit of a character in general, lots of stories about him. But my buddy, he hits the windshield washer, and it mists the other officer. The other officer gets annoyed and shoots some remarks at my buddy before dropping, "I don't have time for you. I have to go hang out and work on major crimes," before he smirked and left. Well, Major Crimes had him and another winner digging through garbage down at the dump in order to find evidence that got mistakenly thrown out. And that's a whole other story. Had me in tears when my buddy told me the story. Next story. A man during COVID was working as a lay preacher, used to visit all of the elderly folk who were staying at home to protect themselves, but didn't believe in vaccines/COVID, etc. Well, he eventually caught COVID and was intubated. He almost died, and has since changed his mind about COVID, but there's no real record of how many people he infected and died because of him. He's been blacklisted by the community regardless of how contrite he is now. Next story. Scene, NYU, 1980s. Me, 20M, 215 pounds, varsity wrestling team, obnoxious big mouth. Other guy, 20M, maybe 135 pounds soaking wet, no history of athletic activity, obnoxious big mouth too. So we get into an argument while staffing the gym check-in/towel room and start bumping chests. Assistant wrestling coach pulls the other guy away, and I take a few steps back. The other guy's shouting, "Let me at him, let me at him!" And the assistant wrestling coach shrugs and steps out of the way. But the other guy looks like Wile E. Coyote realizing there's no cliff anymore. I punch him in the nose just hard enough to make it bleed, and I walk away. I should have walked away at first, but sorry, Mike. Next story. Was on a plane once, and we had taxied over to the gate after a long flight, but the doors hadn't opened yet. There was a 2-year-old who was absolutely done with being confined, and his parents were trying to wrestle him back into a seat while getting their stuff together. Well, he slipped out of their grasp and got into the aisle where people were lined up. His mom was trying to reach him and telling him to get back in the seat, and he snatched his arm away, turned, planted his feet, and roared with all of the fury a toddler had who's been told to do something they didn't want to do. Then the plane doors opened and all of the people who couldn't see, like 99%, just surged forward, absolutely flattening the little dude. Someone hauled him out from underfoot and handed him over the backseat to his mom. He was screeching, but I don't think he was hurt, more just scared and infuriated by the indignity of the whole world not bending to his will. But damn, if that wasn't a perfect object lesson in humans failing to appreciate their puniness in the face of an uncaring world, though. I see a lot of much older people who should know better by now, and I think they need a dose of what that kid got. Next story. My neighbor did a huge reno that took over a year. We had to live in his construction site for over a year, dirt everywhere, driveway torn up unexpectedly, access blocked, damage to my house, rude contractors. When I complained that he didn't appreciate that we had to live in his construction site for a year while he and his family rented a house elsewhere, he said to me, "Do you know how much that cost me?" Next story. I was at a music festival and offered to let a woman sit on my shoulders to get a better view of the stage since she was so petite. After a few songs, she mentions to her friend that she needs period products, and so I immediately set her down and refused to let her back up. She then proceeds to throw a fit, and a guy proceeds to insert himself into the situation to white knight. I separate myself from them and let them do what they will. After the next song, though, I look over and the dude is freaking out with a big red splotch all over his back and shoulders, and the woman crying. Next story. Was told this by one of my company's VP of sales. Right before the pandemic hit, we hired a new CEO who decided to do round-table meetings with select offices throughout the company. The goal was to figure out what tools we can be arming our sales teams with to make their jobs easier and them more effective. Agenda was attached, whole 9 yards. So, in one of our local offices, a high-level AE that handles only Fortune 100s decided to take the meeting to go on a rant over how he was having a hard time getting a product for his customer. No one was helping him find it, etc. And it took up 45 minutes of the meeting. No one else really got to speak to or give the CEO feedback. After the meeting, our CEO reached out to the VP of sales and basically told him, "Have the rep show you every person he's emailed asking about this and let me know their responses. I'd like to know if our support employees are just not responding or what." So the VP sat down with the rep in person, had him pull up the emails. All were responded to with instructions for him to follow up to get the product he needed. No one dropped the ball. All of his questions were answered. He just never did the work they advised him to. The rep didn't make it 3 more weeks. He was let go. Next story. Guy on my wrestling team was warming up and was up next during a preseason tournament. It's pretty common to pace around the mat you're up next on to loosen up, get in the zone while the guys before you wrestle. So, the match before him is about to end, and he does a super high squat jump out of nowhere. He saw it on TV for big-name college tournaments, and he lands full weight on a rolled ankle and has to miss his entire senior year season. Ironically, he's a physical therapist now. Next story. Probably not the worst I've witnessed, but personally, probably the worst that's happened to me. I was riding my bike, probably 100 feet from my house, on my way to school. I was listening to music, I got really into it and closed my eyes and immediately crashed into the curb. So, I had to sheepishly walk back home and ask my mom for a ride. When she asked how I had crashed, I had to explain it was because I had closed my eyes and promptly yeeted myself into the curb. Next story. So, worked in IT. The company that employed me took over a contract for a company that previously had in-house IT staff. It was just 2 guys. One of them was understanding about it and cool. He actually was asked to sort of train me in the general day-to-day of the building. He knew the company made the decision, not me personally, and he didn't take it as such. The other guy, however, he was pissed about the whole thing. Cold-shouldered me the entire time our positions overlapped. Gave me attitude when I had asked him for things. The in-house guys had some access I needed existed for a time until our company formally took over. One day, a VIP at the company had a basic computer issue and called me directly to ask for help. As per our policy, I asked her to please put in a ticket, but I would head right over while she did it. And it may sound annoying, but it is how our job is justified. We need tickets to show records of what we do. The in-house guys would just go to them and fix it. Well, the VIP must have asked the jerk in-house guy as well or something because he caught wind of it. He calls me and gives me crap saying that's not how things work and saying he's going to their office. I was on my way already, so when I get to the VIP's office, he is outside the door and now he wants to get in my face. He starts yelling at me and pointing his finger in my face while he does it, and I told him to get his finger out of my face. He then pokes me in the chest, talking more crap, asserting his non-existent dominance. Well, the VIP's office is directly adjacent to the HR director for the company's office. She really liked me because I established a good relationship with her from the start. So she just walked out of her office right behind the guy and says, "What's going on here?" I went in to help the VIP and finished what I was doing while he had a private meeting with the HR director. I was called into a conference room with the two of them right after where she told him to apologize for his behavior. After he finished, she asked me what I thought should happen. The guy was due to be out of there in 2 weeks. This was just before Christmas anyway, so I just accepted the apology and said, let's just leave it at that. And she said, well, unfortunately, that is workplace bullying, and she wouldn't tolerate it. He got fired and was walked out on the spot. Next story. Not my story, but my girlfriend's. She was making a lateral move where she works and they hired her replacement. This woman who claimed on her resume to have 10 plus years experience working in that role and other various experiences and accolades that are relevant to the job. It immediately became clear though, this woman has zero effing idea what she is doing, is computer illiterate and dumb as a brick. Even with explicit written instructions, she still couldn't figure things out. My girlfriend spends a month training this woman. On literally the first day, she is on her own as my girlfriend has her own new responsibilities now. The woman won't stop calling though, asking questions about things my girlfriend has seen her do as if she is unable to retain new information. That weekend, after only working 2 days by herself, she texts my girlfriend and says she is quitting effective Monday. The building administrator manages to convince her to stay and they work out a game plan. However, this woman thinks she is too valuable to be fired and begins asking questions about taking my girlfriend's job and also wanting to only work 3 days a week and no weekends. In addition, she caused problems for the staff she manages, refuses to actually do her job, and foists every responsibility she has onto anyone else she can get away with. The building admin confided that they had to wait 90 days before firing her, but the woman literally only made it 2 weeks. Too many complaints from staff, and then texting the building admin that she was unilaterally deciding she was only going to work 3 days a week and had called out twice already, and he immediately fired her. But yeah, wish I could have been a fly on the wall when she got that message. There's a lot more details I'm skipping for brevity's sake, but it's been an ongoing saga for the past month and a half, and we're both glad it is over. Next story. Story of someone close to me, not mine, so I don't necessarily condone the testing, but funny. Anyway, guy is dating a girl and is unsure if he wants to get serious because there are some red flags. So to test her, he sends her a gift every day for 8 days. She has a lot of cats, and for the first 7 days, all of the gifts are increasingly lavish gifts for her cats. On the 8th day was a huge and lavish gift for her, but she never got there. She flipped out at him on the 5th to 6th day for getting better gifts for her cats than her and only caring about the cats. Who's jealous of their own pets? All right, so let me ask you guys, do you think that's a good way to go about things? Like OP said, it's not their story and they don't condone the testing, but I feel like that's a pretty dumb way to test red flags. I feel like getting to know the person or asking a moderate amount of questions will get you where you want to be or give you the information you want to know. If somebody gave me gifts for 7 consecutive days, 8 consecutive days, I probably wouldn't be necessarily annoyed, but I probably would, but I'd just be like, what are you doing? We just met. What is this? That's just weirdo behavior on the other side. Maybe she's got red flags, but I think that's a really stupid test, air quote. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Next story. So, the first time I visited the Wisconsin Dells, I did both the upper and lower Dells boat tours. The tour is with the same company, but you have to change boats because of the dam. Now, the interpretive guide for the lower Dells was a younger woman who was a theater and drama major at a college that I've since forgotten. I know this because she spent much of the tour talking about herself. She'd also brought what looked like a small karaoke machine, which looked like a boombox with a microphone attached. Whenever she wasn't talking about herself, she was singing some god-awfully hokey gibberish that she's written herself. It was obvious she thought she would be discovered while doing this. If she said more than 10 words about the actual features we were supposed to be touring, I'd be very surprised. Most likely, she heard the sparse, lukewarm clapping as resounding applause. But anyway, the real cringe moment was at the end, when she offered to autograph our tour booklets. When no one formed a line, she actually grabbed a couple from the people sitting closest to her. Fortunately, the guide for the other part was a teacher most of the year. He knew a lot about the area's history and natural features. His narration was good enough to make up for the would-be diva's BS. Next story. Driving through the Canadian Rockies in wintertime. I'm stuck behind a camper and it's a 2-lane road. I can't pass because of visibility and lots of oncoming traffic. Behind me is a guy in a silver Porsche. He's flipping his high beams at me, honking, and I pull over as far to the right as I can without kissing the guardrail, but he doesn't pass. He wants me to pass the camper first, and it's not happening. As we get closer to the town, we get to a passing lane. So the Porsche guy gives me one more long blast on his horn, flips me the finger as he goes flying by me, and launches up the hill. Well, the cops have a speed trap at the end of the passing lane, and he's pulled over getting a ticket as I roll by 1 minute later. Gave him a cheery wave and a little toot-toot on the horn as I went by. Next story. In my high school, we had a thing at the end of the year to settle beefs. A boxing ring was set up in the basketball gym, and the whole school would show up and there would be a dozen or so fights of scuffles that got broken up prematurely. This was an all-boys military school in South Texas. The place sucked. I was on the boxing team, so not allowed to do smokers, which is what the event was called, but we got to coach the fighters between rounds, 3 2-minute rounds. Well, there was a real hothead, roided out dude, about 5'10" and 200 pounds, just ripped. Full beard as a junior that was a notorious a-hole. I witnessed him bullying another student who was about the same height but skinny, maybe 150 pounds. It was tough to watch all the hallway bullying between the classes. In the weeks leading up to smokers, the bully got louder and louder, bragging about beating this guy up in the ring. It was going to be ugly. The other guy had never trained and had little to no experience fighting. The roided out guy had beat up a handful of guys that year. Every one of them was bigger than this unfortunate fella. So, fight time. We are ringside and just telling him to avoid getting hit. Run the clock down and nobody would blame him. The fight starts and it's like a Charlie Chaplin skit. Him ducking behind the ref, running back and forth, not even trying to fight, all while the bully is yelling and flexing. Then the 10-second bell rings and the skinny dude puts his gloves up to square up with the bully. The bully moves in quickly to destroy him. But before the bully even throws a jab, skinny dude literally crosses his eyes and throws a haymaker that lands squarely on the bully's jaw and knocks him out cold while he's still standing. Mouthpiece goes flying, head cocked to the side, his hands fall to his side, and just like a big tree falling, he falls forward, face first onto the mat, hands to his side, face still crooked and cocked to the side, and he's out cold. The entire school went nuts. It was one of the best things I've seen in my entire life. The winner raises his hand and starts jumping up and down. It was glorious. Next story. Used to work with a guy whose girlfriend was best friends with the store manager. He sucked at his job, to be honest, but he always got away with it. One day, store manager got fired for a very stupid reason. District manager as well as several corporate owners were there to ensure any and all loose ends were closed. Late in the day, corporate was about to leave when DM made a final walk around to get a list of last-minute stuff to fix before they left. This guy, who never had been addressed, apparently took issue with DM, a woman, told him to get stuff done. Mind you, she didn't even order, just said what needed to be done. Genius decided to mutter under his breath very clearly, "Effing B-word," and got fired on the spot. His girlfriend decided to back him up and also got fired on the spot for similar language. They could have waited 30 seconds when everyone was out of earshot, but nope. Next story. Many years ago, as I was graduating from art school, a guy in one of my illustration classes got an assignment to illustrate an article in Playboy magazine. This was quite a big deal for a kid who hadn't even graduated yet, and he was bragging about it, but overplayed his hand by telling the art director, or whoever it was that gave him the assignment, that he would only accept it if he was invited to the Playboy mansion. This was for a single illustration, mind you, not a full-time job, but even then, seriously? Needless to say, that assignment vanished pretty quickly. Next story. I was an internal employee at a bank. My company also worked as a broker for freelancers, so we all had to log our hours at the bank and at our employers, but the second one could not be done from the bank's network, so it had to be done on a computer not owned by the bank. Well, one guy didn't feel like doing that because he didn't want to use my employer's website for logging hours. He claimed he was invaluable for the bank. He wasn't, so he was let go. He lost a job where he was appreciated and valued by his colleagues and direct management because he wouldn't follow procedure and log his hours. Next story. My ex's dad, who took it upon himself to try and assault a child on a bike because said child was winding up some fans of the rival club further up the road on the other side. He ran over, swung for the kid, missed, and ended up breaking his wrist. I was laughing inside because it's the least he deserved. Glad to have that family well away from me now. They were effing embarrassing. And take it from me, get out of a relationship you do not want to be in sooner rather than later. Next story. A girl in high school was leaving and wanted to announce it to our year level. And it was horrible. It was a rambling that went on for a full period and into the start of lunchtime. A few teachers tried to cut her off and end it, but she would just speak loudly over them and continue her tirade. When the lunch bell rang, a few of us started trying to trickle away with the crowd and leave. Then a whole chunk of girls followed, then teachers, excusing themselves. She was still harping on though, and it was impressive. She still had things to talk about. I heard by the end of it, only a few suck-ups and the school counselor were all that were left. Next story. Pretty minor one overall, but a guy overhearing me talking about liking Soulcalibur started bragging about his talent at the game and being a tourney player and challenged me to a match on the arcade machine the theater we were at had set up. It was an OG Soulcalibur cabinet, so he waited for me to pick my character, Siegfried, who's slow but has power and reach. And he picked what he viewed as a hard counter, Cervantes, who's reasonably quick and has a powerful ranged attack. So 2 minutes later, and he was fuming with humiliation at being defeated by a genuinely inferior player who had essentially button-mashed his way to victory. Being just skilled enough to actually use my character, but not enough to pull off most of his heavy-hitting combos, I was essentially too random and aggressive in my attack patterns and grapple maneuvers for him to counteract effectively. Next story. So my ex gate-crashed a family event at my sister's place and screamed at my whole family for me being a horrible boyfriend and breaking up with her. We had been engaged, and I broke up with her the previous week. But she screamed at everyone for about half an hour, broke plates and threw food on the floor and went absolutely nuts. My brother, who arrived at the time this was going on, called the police. So she was arrested, released on a warning, and I got a restraining order. Did I also not mention that I don't speak to my sister because she let my ex in? Next story. My mom is this kind of person. At my baby shower, she bought me a gift, something that she wasn't supposed to do. It didn't help that she drank 3 glasses of wine while she can't drink due to strong medication. She first clapped her hands really loudly and yelled, "Shh, shh, I have something to say." Then she continued by saying that she didn't know she wasn't supposed to bring me a present, and then handed me 2 envelopes. When I went to open one, she yanked it out of my hand and said I must do the other one first. It was a letter about how she wanted me and my sister-in-law to have breakfast together because we are both pregnant, yada 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 yada. And I said thank you and told my sister-in-law. She then yelled, "Well, read it out loud!" And I said I'd rather not. And then she slapped me in front of everyone and said, "Why not?" And I coolly replied that I didn't feel comfortable doing that. The room was awkwardly and totally silent. Ultimately, my sister-in-law read it. She got the same letter. But sorry, not sorry. I'm not letting you control me anymore. Next story. When I was in my early 20s, my friend and I went through this phase where we hung out at our city's public pool. We were young and we were poor. This kid named Bobby used to come around and insist that everyone watch him do flips and all of that stuff off the diving board. He would announce that he was Bobby and pat his chest with both hands until you looked at him. Otherwise, he'd stand there until you acknowledged him. Then one day, he decided he was going to climb an empty lifeguard chair and do a backflip because he didn't want to wait in line. Lifeguards tried to stop him, but he kept announcing that he was Bobby. Finally, though, they relented because he refused to get down on the grounds that he was Bobby, and he flipped right onto the concrete head first, missing the pool entirely. He ended up fracturing his skull, and they shut the pool down and called EMS. Next story. "Oh, Bobby, you young, dumb fool. You bald idiot. I don't know why, but I feel like he's bald and young or has short hair. I'm just imagining Bobby Hill. But anyway, I have a relevant story. One of the ones we read earlier reminded me of it. But I was driving home one day, 3 lanes on the highway. I'm in the middle lane. In front of me is a semi-truck. It's long. I decide to go around it in the left lane. So there I am in the left lane. You can't really go around me until I get past that truck. So 3 seconds that you're going to be just perpetually behind me if you're in the left lane. And a Kia comes out of nowhere. This tiny little piece of crap. And in the 3 seconds that you can't get around me because there's a truck next to us, I look in my rear view mirror as I'm speeding up, and the guy behind me is like, go, 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 go. And he's like shouting stuff. I can read it, like, you can see his lips. He's like telling me to go faster. So anyway, I get out of the left lane. He speeds past me. Then 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, he's on the side of the road getting pulled over by a cop. It was like, I wish I honked my horn and flipped him off, but I was just too busy giggling. But anyway, guys, that's my story. We're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and bye-bye.